This week on Streaming Star Wars with Ammo and Fletzer, we talk about the climactic scene from Chapter 3 of The Mandalorian with a man who is there, actor Dominic Pace. We talk about what this episode means to Mando fans, and we take your questions in the live chat. We've never removed our helmets. This is the way.
Here we are on a Friday talking about Star Wars. It is Streaming Star Wars, and you are hearing the wonderful voice of Ammo. That's self-indulgent. I should never do that. But I'm Ammo, he's Fletzer, and here we are hanging out talking about the greatness that is The Mandalorian, Chapter 3. And Pete, some people might call you Dominic Pace, maybe because we just had your lower third as Dominic Pace, but he is our special guest joining us here on a Friday. Different time than usual, Pete. It feels a little different, but I'm still happy with being able to be live with you on a Friday to talk about maybe if we thought The Mandalorian was good, it's great now. What did you think of Chapter 3?
I loved it. It brought to life so many different things that we've seen before on the in animation, and it brought action that we hadn't seen before. It upped the ante there. I fell more in love with Baby Yoda. I just don't think it could get any better than this. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I thought it was like I said, it was incredible to see. We talked about how The Mandalorian has been so cinematic. But when we watched this episode 3, and we're gonna get into this, but I think of that battle sequence at the end of the chapter, I was blown away with just the scale. And I've never seen Mandalorians in real life do jetpacking and blastering, and this is probably the best time of any. We are talking spoilers about Episode 3, Chapter 3 of The Mandalorian. If you have not watched The Mandalorian, you have to watch that episode and come back to us. We aren't going anywhere. We'll be here.
Right.
And in fact, sometimes we want to get it so right for you that we'll start the show twice, just so that way you have the best experience here with us on Streaming Star Wars. So yeah, Streaming Star Wars here on a Friday live with you. In case you didn't know, you can always follow us at Streaming SW on Twitter, and we play it at the beginning of every episode, but you can join us live Fridays, usually at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on the Beyond the Blast Doors YouTube channel.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but it does say people are telling me right now that they are still waiting for us to go on.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm in the live chat right now, and everybody is live, and I'm seeing our stream go right now. So that is interesting. Maybe they should go to the Beyond the Blast Doors. Can you comment in there and tell them to go to the Beyond the Blast Doors YouTube channel and refresh? And as I was saying, you can watch us live or on the rewind. The beauty of going live, right? On the Beyond the Blast Doors YouTube channel, or if you want to listen on the audio replay, you can check us out on Around the Galaxy podcast stream. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Around the Galaxy, and that's where you can find Streaming Star Wars. They might just be on the old stream, Pete. There's a possibility. YouTube has done a thing where they are forcing YouTubers now to use the new YouTube studio to go live. And I am positive now that what happened was the streams are no longer synced because of that. So we were maybe pushing out one live announcement, and we're going live on a separate one. So have them come into here. It's no problem at all. You're directing this thing. It's no problem.
No, hey, I'm just happy everybody's able to join us. And, technical difficulties, whatever.
I don't think it's a technical difficulty. They just got to hit refresh. Okay, so let's talk about this, Pete. Mandalorian views for the first week. Now, we were all very curious to see what the numbers would be for that first week, for that first episode. We weren't even sure if we would even get that information. Would Disney release that information? Well, it turns out we're getting those numbers. 40 million views. 40 million views. Downloads. And you think about that, 10 million subscribers for Disney Plus in its, first 12 hours. It wasn't even 24 hours. They already had 10 million subscribers. So pretty impressive there. But where does this stack up? We were talking about it earlier when we were going over show notes. It's like third all time of most watched stream television show, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Stranger Things came in first at 103 million. And you know what, though? Netflix already existed. Netflix was already a household staple. So I'm not surprised that it was more. I'm sure there were not as many people even with the service yet. So 40 million in the first 5 days is ridiculously impressive, and I think it speaks to, Disney made the investment in Star Wars to as certainly as part of their objectives for bringing the streaming service to life. So I think it's working for them. I think it's 40 million. That's nothing to sneeze at, and I think it's only going to continue to go up from there once more and more people get comfortable with the service. You talk to your average non-Star Wars obsessed nerd like us, and some of them don't even know that it exists yet. So.
No, I think that's a really good point. And we're only going to see these numbers climb, and that's kind of what you alluded to. But again, 2025 is the target date for Disney Plus to have more than 100 million subscribers. That is, I believe, according to Bob Iger and Alan Horn on the most recent call, they're saying by 2025, we're going to have 100 million people on our platform, which again speaks to their business model that they're shifting everything, and they're saying that Disney Plus is the future, not just of Star Wars, but for all Disney Plus. So really exciting to see how this continues to unfold. And as we mark through there, I'm telling you right now, I've canceled my Netflix. I only have Hulu.
Did?
Yeah, canceled Netflix. I only have Hulu because I bought the bundle. I now have ESPN Plus, but ESPN Plus won't even let me in my account for some reason. So go figure there. But no, it's really exciting to hear the word. That's impressive. In a week, 40 million views. No TV show on cable is doing that right now. And let's go into it further. So we're talking about the future of Star Wars. This is something that came out. Hollywood Reporter put out something this week about the future of Star Wars and how Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni kind of play a role into that. And I've got the original article pulled up. And I've got the quote, the excerpt here that I want to read for everybody is this here. We're going to switch this around. This is really exciting. Live streaming on a Friday, streaming Star Wars Episode 3. We're having a blast. Okay, so it says, so with or without Kennedy, sources say it seems likely that Favreau will have a lot more say over the future of Star Wars. These sources also say Kennedy's ideal team includes roles for Michelle Rejwan, who is the producer on Episode 9, and Lucasfilm's Senior VP Live Action Development Production, Dave Filoni. The man's title has really expanded over the last few years. He's a veteran animation director and George Lucas protege who directed live action for the very first time with the episodes of Mandalorian. Even if remaining at Lucasfilm is not in the cards for Kennedy, this plan would enable her to trumpet that she has done the job she was hired to do, and that was complete the Skywalker saga and left the franchise in good hands. Pete, let's talk about that. Leaving the franchise in good hands. Would you say if you were a film producer, maybe you're the CEO and president of, I don't know, a big corporation that makes movies, and you had one movie that grossed $2 billion, would that be successful?
I think I'd be pretty happy with that. I'd probably be ready to retire at that moment.
Okay, what if you did a second movie to that made $1 billion? Would you consider that a success?
I'd be pretty comfortable, and I would start to feel like I was getting a little greedy.
Okay, so now let's say you did a third movie. This is the third movie you've done in 3 years, Pete, and it grossed more than $1 billion, but not as much as $2 billion. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm a little let down now that I'm so used to getting $2 billion a movie.
Well, okay. Well, that makes sense. Maybe that's why your fourth movie only made like $350 million nationwide. Listen, you cannot write the history of Hollywood, and a lot of people have said this, but it's true. You can't write the history of Hollywood and modern cinema without including Kathleen Kennedy. What she did with Spielberg in the 70s and 80s, and of course how that led to her relationship with George Lucas, and eventually being handed the baton to lead Lucasfilm, Star Wars into the next generation. There's a reason for all these events happening. It's because she is kind of like the GOAT of her time, and it was kind of assumed that she would at least stay through the Skywalker saga and get these movies made. And it seems like a natural place for the baton to be handed over. It's not quite clear who's going to receive that baton. You know, there's a lot of people that have takes on the structure. Kathleen Kennedy is a great business mind, and she's great with logistics, but she's not a creative person. Like, she's getting torn apart in headlines right now, like this week, because she said that there's no source material for Star Wars stories to be told from, which is true if you're talking about Episode 9, which she was. There's no Episode 9 book. But there's a lot of EU content, and there's a lot of current content being created in the books and the comics to inspire new stories. So, you know,
Yeah, but I think the point she was making was that the movies and there's no, when you're making a Marvel series, you have, 75 years of content to pull from. And so I think she's also referencing, and I think this is what's making some of the old school fans a little irritated, is that the reality is it's they are sort of driving this this boat at the same time that they're building it. And I think moving forward, that content is going to come that way. And I think that's fine. I think you look at things like The Mandalorian. You do look at things like Rogue One and things like that. And I think what you're doing is you're building some great stories, and you're also handing them over to great people, right? Favreau is not a bad call. They're going to announce who is directing and what the next movie is going to be in January. I'm putting my bet on Favreau. I don't know if that's a good bet or not, but I don't think it's a terrible bet. So and hey, Deborah Chow this week. I know you wanted to get to her, Dave. The first female director of a live action Star Wars television. She handled. She's going to be handling the entire Kenobi series.
Yeah, I don't want to jump that to though. I do want to be able to respond, because it's like I get that Kennedy was in a situation where she's talking about Episode 9, but I think we also I think that all fans should be able to have that conversation. And I do want to say,
without a doubt.
And I am on the side. She was talking about Episode 9, and there is no Episode 9 source material. They are supposed to rely on the directors, but again, my point was that she does not have, I don't even think she has a care to really understand the canon. And I think that's what the role of the story group should be. But in the current structure of Star Wars storytelling, you bring on creatives, they tell the story that they want to tell to Kathleen Kennedy, and she's like, oh, yeah, go ahead and do that. Where The Mandalorian, I think one of the reasons why it's working so well is the fact that, she seeks out, people to give her ideas of what could be maybe the first thing produced on Disney Plus. Jon Favreau pitches this idea. He's got this great relationship with Dave Filoni. She goes, okay, that's a great idea. You two just go and do that, and we'll see what you create, instead of what seems like micromanaging with the films. And so in a way, it's praise. I think she's having self-awareness to trust in Jon and Dave to tell these stories with these other directors. But I think that model needs to be adapted moving forward. You're not going to have a J.J. Abrams every movie, but when you bring on these creatives, you have to trust them to tell that story. So wrapping the bow on that conversation, she might be done after the Rise of Skywalker, and I think overall it's going to be an outrageous success. Those who have their gripes should probably move on, because no matter what franchise you're consuming, there's going to be decisions made that you will and will not agree with. Now, you mentioned Deborah Chow. And Deborah Chow directed the episode of this week's Mandalorian episode. And you also mentioned she's the first female director of all time, as far as first female director to direct live-action Star Wars. And I'd say she crushed it. You could tell it was a different director compare if you're just putting it next to a Dave Filoni that did all these Clone Wars episodes and Rebels episodes. There were subtle differences I noticed to framing that were unique, and I noticed it, but it didn't bother me at all. What was your take on Deborah's go at Star Wars here for the first time?
Yeah, it felt like she knew how to shoot action. She knew how to shoot a giant fight scene. So I think I think the role she did, and it's interesting you say that, because I definitely felt like it was a slightly different take to the episode. It felt different than the first two. The first two felt almost like a video game in how linear they were. Now this one, of course, it did go from point A to point B, pretty straight line, but there were subtle pieces within it. There was the way you actually felt for the Mandalorian as he was considering, what do I do with Baby Yoda, as everybody likes to call him. You could tell she was able to capture that emotion. But then when the firefight breaks out, spoilers, she handled it so well. It was a phenomenal action sequence. You were at the edge of your seat the whole time. It had sort of a little bit of an Indiana Jones feel to it in a way, but it definitely was. It was a different feel than the other two episodes. And again, the first two episodes felt great, and this one felt great as well.
Yeah, it was thrilling to one the action sequence. That's what I'm going to go to every time, I think, because we haven't seen live action skirmishes like we have in The Mandalorian. Very intimate, with a lot of close-ups on The Mandalorian. I think back to that first episode of the show. But then with this, that shot of the Razor Crest kind of blasting out of there, and then you're able to still see all the Mandalorians skirmishing with the bounty hunters still in the streets there. That was so fun to watch. And it did feel a little Clone Wars Rebel-like with that framing. But I wonder if that was part of the conversation, because when you bring on these directors, they're going to have their own take with how to approach a scene. but there are aesthetic traditions of how Star Wars is kind of set up, and I wonder if I would assume Dave Filoni's there on set talking with Deborah Chow, be like, all right, so, we're shooting this battle with Mandalorians, and this is kind of like how, we like to have the camera tilted up, when Mandalorians come down, from their jetpacks, and, just like things like that. Like, I'd be really fascinated to hear that dialogue and see how a director, and in this case, Deborah Chow, is like, okay, well, I'm going to translate that, and here's how I'm going to still do my own thing. I thought you could tell...
if only we had somebody we could talk to who was actually on the set.
Is now the time to do that? Should we do that now? Should we bring on our special guest?
I'm just saying we'll be able to find that out. It's a great question to ask.
It's a great question to ask. I'm thrilled about it. And you watch this episode. Okay, so what does Deborah do well? I love what she does in space. I like how instead of the ship entering and exiting from like one side of the screen to the next, she kind of keeps your object centered. That's something that I noticed. And I really like how she does skirmishes, the battles. I like how it's fast acting. I like I'm a shots guy. I work in broadcast news for a living, so like I'm not cinematic with what my work is, but I like to work within a sequence, and so I like doing a lot of these tights, and I'm noticing off the shoulder. But then you get this really nice medium shot. I think of like this super duper Mandalorian. I don't know what we want to call him, but he has a machine gun. And he's freaking mowing people down, and I love that shot. I love how that character was brought, just enters the shot from above, brings the gun down. It was awesome. So,
but in addition to that, I think what makes that sort of centering comment so important is that, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. I think when they brought the baby out of the room after he was handed over, it made leaving the screen that much more important, so much more powerful. So I think you're right. I think her approach to this episode was beautiful. It was beautifully done.
I would like to also find out if we were able to magically have someone appear that was on set and we have insight into this. I'd be curious to know the writing process for these episodes. So like you have Jon Favreau and you have Dave Filoni, and from my understanding, they pretty much did the bulk of the writing. And this is something that we'll get into later on in the show, but this was the first show that really did feel like a TV show for me as well, in the sense of the dialogue and just how some things were shown to us at the beginning of the episode. I think of like the Beskar, put into the sleeve of, Grief's chest. Be like, I'm even rich too. Well, that seemed to play out, and the Mandalorian always asking, well, what are they going to do with the kid? What are they going to do with the kid? Eventually, the Mandalorian, I guess, is going to break and be like, let's go get the kid and save him from the Empire. So, just my thoughts. Before we dive into our live guest interview with Dominic Pace, which we are so thrilled for him to be with us, just want to give a few shout-outs to the live chat real quick. We got Frammy with us, Charlie Skywalker, Nick Milkey is with us, Rural Farm Boy is in there as one of our moderators. We have Mr. Rez joining the conversation. We have Muhammad with us. Thank you for being here on Streaming Star Wars on a Friday afternoon, something that's a little different. But you know what? We're making it work. It feels pretty good. Pete, you're a beautiful man.
I like it.
2Med2 is with us as well, and a slew of others. We have 90MF Comics with us as well. This is so great to have you, but everyone here in the live chat with us. So without further ado, joining us now on Streaming Star Wars on a Friday, he is a bounty hunter that we have come to love here in recent weeks, because Dominic Pace has been not just a voice for the show, in The Mandalorian, but also a voice for fans, getting everyone excited. We are going to bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us on Streaming Star Wars on this Friday, we have Mr. Dominic Pace. Dominic, how are you doing on this Friday?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Is that a head? Are you holding his head?
I had a guy down in Texas. He wanted to sculpt the bust more or less for me, and so many different artists have been so excited to kind of share this journey with me. This guy was Wes Koch, who did this design for me, and I think any Star Wars fan would agree that would be one of the first things ever in terms of, if you had a role and your own unique bounty hunter, to get all different illustrations and different sculptures and pieces of art so you can share it with others. And I've been so grateful to so many people have reached out.
Dominic, you seem to be on a real high right now. So let's just get it right into it as far as your first episode, we think of many who we don't know, but your first episode on The Mandalorian, we've seen your character in action. What is it like now to see you in Star Wars and fans reacting to seeing you in Star Wars?
It really is everything I had hoped for. People are talking about, hey, oh, we want to see this, you want to see that. It's almost like winning the lottery and saying, oh, let me see if I can win another lottery. Deborah was such a sweetheart. I owe a lot to her. They had to do a cut within the cantina in order to get us to that situation outside. And I made that cut, and that was specifically because of Deborah. She loved the look of my character, along with Filoni and Favreau. So obviously, in a perfect world, I would love to be seen in a flashback with the Kenobi series. But at the same time, I'm just so grateful. If nothing happens from here on in, and maybe another Star Wars fan has this dream or this opportunity, I would be more happy to see somebody else get involved, because that's how gracious I am of this opportunity, even just one time in my lifetime as a diehard Star Wars fan.
It's pretty incredible to hear your excitement, because I think everyone grows up not just loving Star Wars, but could I be in Star Wars too? And it's so cool to hear your enthusiasm, and you share that now. And I'm going to stop talking, but man, I couldn't be happy for you. I know that Pete has a question for you now.
No, I would just want to also, before I say anything, is I want to thank you. I think Disney couldn't have asked for a better ambassador for this show among the social media community. I mean, you've been actively engaging. You've been you never say no to anybody. You've been such a great guy, and I think that's fantastic, and that's really great. And you've been so gracious, and thank you for joining our show. And I know. I'm looking at the live chat, and I'm immediately seeing people saying like Framey saying Dominic is so awesome, just the best brand ambassador for the Mandalorian. So I want to certainly say thank you to you for doing that, and just make sure that we all appreciate it. And what I loved seeing, and I'd love to get your take on it, is sort of this morning, as soon as I woke up, and I wasn't even in the show, and I'm watching the Twitter explode. Tell me a little bit about what was happening to you this morning with fans and friends, sort of keeping you in the loop.
I was scared because I got some news from the 501st about a week ago, and I was nearly to tears that they said they saw me, and they saw some really cool screenshots. But you just never know. I had a nightmare situation. One of my idols, Chaz Palminteri, I guest starred with him in a show called Dr. Vegas. It was a failed series for CBS with Rob Lowe, and it never made it to air. So just behind, it's almost like having like a PTSD in a sort of way, as far as like having this trauma of like somebody texting me and being like, dude, they cut your shots, So we were sort of bracing, and then finally, once people started showing me the screenshots, it was just too good to be true. I've had over 100 credits of different shows and guest stars and co-stars, and this isn't necessarily even an acting accolade, but it just means so much to me, because the whole reason I got involved in this business was due to all the amazing movies that we had as kids in the 80s, the Goonies and E.T., Indiana Jones, Star Wars. And to me, the whole passion that I had to be an entertainer was just to offer that level of escapism that so many artists gave me when I was a kid. The standing ovation, it was an ovation when there was the scene from the skiff with Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi. Just so many magical moments I had as a child. So to be able to be a part of that now is just beyond words.
I never thought we would have a Chaz Palminteri name drop on the show, but I'm really happy about it. That's really cool.
Well, there's a good point to him, because he was 40 years old when he got his first break. And as an Italian American, us Italians, we didn't have it easy either. We had to deal with, stereotypes and hardships in one way or another in our country. But at the same time, just like Rocky, in the Stallone story, they all stuck with it, and they worked hard. So he was always an idol to me. So that was the reference, and why I was so honored to work alongside him at that time.
All right, so let's actually dive into the questions here that we want you to answer. And, of course, we want you to be commenting down in the live chat right now if you're joining us live for this episode of Streaming Star Wars with us, getting your questions ready for Dominic at the end of this. But, you bring your character to life on screen, but how do you go about approaching this bounty hunter that does a lot of acting with his eyes, not so much with lines? Was that really challenging for you? Do you have conversations with Deborah of how you can make this character really make an impact on the viewer?
Well, I think, a lot of times what I'm told in terms of auditions is less is more. I'm 6'4", 260 pounds, very similar to like Friday the 13th, Jason, Kane Hodder, who did an amazing job as playing Jason. So a lot of times it's less is more. I actually opted, Richard A. Porter was the costume designer, and I had an opportunity. They had to rush me to set when we were doing the cantina scenes for the first episode on day one. They actually misplaced the mouthpiece, but I did not want to leave without it, because I felt that it was less about me and more about this intimidating, amazing-looking bounty hunter. So for me, within the eyes expresses everything, but more or less, I've kind of, been pigeonholed in that sort of imposing Even though I'm the nicest guy on earth, just sort of that stoic sort of presence. But hearing Carl's words through my ear, and I was so close to Carl, there's something, if you were to play a sport and you were to play against LeBron or you were to play against Bryce Harper or whoever, maybe somebody from the Cardinals that you love, you up your level of game when you start hearing their energy and you start feeling their energy. So being next to Carl in terms of the intensity and as far as the situation, we did not know who the baby was. I thought it was either Ray, Poe, or a backstory for Finn. I was just automatically locked in, not to mention the adrenaline from 30 plus years of being a diehard Star Wars fan. So it just kind of came naturally. There's an acting technique in terms of working from the outside in. I was with Tim Robbins in 2004. He had a theater company called the Actors Gang. And when you put on the boots, you put on the face mask, all of a sudden it starts overtaking you, almost like the movie Venom, to where I always joke that this character would not like me. So you kind of let them take over. And when you have that presence, all of a sudden different things happen to you within, and you just have to open your mind and listen to that.
So real quick, just double check, on set, you did not know that it was a baby that looked similar to Yoda. You thought it was another character that had already been established in Star Wars. So it was very secretive on set, even of what the bounty was.
Without question, and I understand that was the same with Empire Strikes Back, and rightfully so. I've been so excited, obviously, to share and be an ambassador for the series, but at the same time, every interview has been respectful to $100+ million budget, not to mention to Deborah and John and Dave and everyone involved, Kathleen and George Lucas. So I was happy that we didn't know. All we needed to know as an actor, same with David Prowse, was the situation. And that's fine, because out of respect to Disney and the storyline, you don't want some big bald Italian guy telling you the story before anyone else, or anyone else for that matter.
So how did you react when you watched the first episode and you saw what it was? Did you react? You surely reacted like the rest of us.
I can't tell you. I mean, it's funny. I don't normally get tickled over how adorable something is. But this thing has caught the hearts of all of us, where you're like trying to formulate in your mind if this thing could ever be made real, because it's so gorgeous. It's adorable.
So yeah, I mean I think my jaw literally hit the floor. So let me switch gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about being on this set from a different perspective. A lot of us dream of getting to see what happens on the set or we'd all love to be an actor, but that's not going to happen. Maybe for David. But this show feels so real. It looks like there's a lot of practical effects, and the real sets have been mentioned quite a bit. Can you describe the scale and what it's like being on a Jon Favreau set, and specifically the set of that big battle sequence?
Absolutely. Well, first, and just to talk about John, Dave, and Deborah, it was absolute professionalism. You had a level of diplomacy. I was on a few old, sets. You say True Detective 2, where all of a sudden you can sometimes feel the tension, or you can feel that the producer, like, heads are locking, or there's egos. It was just like a fine run ship in terms of whether it was the stars, Pedro or Carl, or just John, David, where it was just what I call constant gentle pressure. So you feel the thought process, but there was no stress. Nobody was panicking. There was no sense. It was just, you have these leaders of this entire team, this entire ship, who just knew what they were doing, and you wanted to be there for them. If they said jump, you just say how high. It was that kind of energy, to where I noticed you were mentioning as far as like how did it work with John and Dave and everybody on set. They just had kind of this level of diplomacy amongst each other. With that being said, also with the technology, my first day on set, I was behind what I thought was a set maybe for the Death Star or Star Destroyer or what have you. There was this almost, I want to say, 20-foot screen, this LED screen. I have perfect eyesight. I was literally 20 feet away from the image when I went on the other side. It was Herzog's scenes. I was just going for a screen test that day. And I cannot tell you the clarity, even literally 20 feet away, where it looks three-dimensional, to where, your eyes, you keep checking your eyes, because just the technology is beyond anything I've ever seen. And you can see that now play out on film. When we were there, obviously there were some drops of green screen, but at the same time, there was some LED stuff as well. But again, for us as the actor, you simplify things. You just stay within the situation, and just the energy in and of itself, being alongside Carl, such a legendary actor, was all I needed to keep it going there.
Just so cool to hear you just talk about that experience on set. And I appreciate you clarifying about just like how it works with like Dave on set. Because again, maybe I don't want to make an assumption. Was John on set much during the shooting of your episode? We just know he was so busy with also doing The Lion King. Was he around much, or were you seeing more of Dave?
All three of them for the 10 days that I was there were all there. Yeah. And you would hear little, like every now and then you'd hear one come to the other and just have kind of a quiet, very peaceful conversation. They were all in control. It was just such a level of professionalism. You hear the old days of James Cameron and Michael Bay shouting and yelling. And don't get me wrong, if anyone's in charge of $100 million budget, I mean, there's got to be some level of stress. But I cannot tell you, and that's probably why they were given the keys to this empire from George and Kathleen, just in regards to the fact that they are leaders, all of them, and Deborah just as much. And like I said, I can't tell you how grateful I am to her.
She did a great job with your episode, and this is something that Pete and I were talking about at the top of the show. You've kind of already addressed developing your character, so I want to ask. I mean, like, with her command on set that you experienced, you feel pretty good as a Star Wars fan with her helming the Kenobi series, right?
Without question. And then also, let's also give credit to the first and second AD. Personally, in terms of diversity, was the first time I ever saw a female first AD and a female second AD. And both of them were amazing leaders as well. So we were taking direction from all of them. And again, they let us play, like even in the cantina, they let us kind of play with our character in terms of establishing them and creating sort of a scenario, maybe perhaps with another bounty hunter or another situation. So I really enjoyed that with them, even though sometimes, the side characters are just like, okay, just kind of do whatever you feel like doing. This is about Carl or it's about Pedro. But they really kind of came up to us and made sure that each one of us had a scenario or had a motive within the situations. For me, obviously being a veteran, it was pretty easy to lock in. And like I said, I'll pick certain things from the energy of the set. Particularly for me, it was Carl's voice and also Pedro. But at the same time, Deborah was just a tremendous leader, and not to mention the first AD and the second AD as well.
Well, we want to ask, give our folks in the live chat a couple options to ask some questions. Pete, have we, it looks like we have a slew.
I'm looking down here. I'm trying to keep up with all of the activity. So Charlie Skywalker, who's a patron of mine and has been around the show a bit, he wants to know, what else you have going on? What's sort of next? I don't want to let you're not getting away that easy, but we're going to start with that question. What other kind of roles do you have coming up? Is there anything we can find you in?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I just guest starred on the last episode of 911 opposite Ronda Rousey. Stephen Dorff he has a new show from Fox called Deputy, and I'll be guest starring on that, opening up that show on January 30th. And then I'm starring a feature film called Anonymous Killers. It's one of the most thought-provoking films about almost like a social structure within our country. And that will release early next year. Psychosis opposite Tyler Mane. Also a big henchman in a film called, Follow Me. It's like a social media thriller that takes place in Russia. These people go to an escape room and they get what they had in store for them. And then also, A Million Little Pieces. I was Billy Bob's driver. I have a little part in that, starring Scout Taylor Johnson. And we're going to be doing the convention tour quite often.
Wow.
So I'm heading to London next week, Sacramento, Stockton, California in January, Pensacola in February. And also, I told my agents to get me involved, have me arrive as early as possible and as late as possible so I can get involved with as many charities as possible through the 501st. The Mandalorian Mercs, and also random charities, just to share our love and our appreciation for Star Wars and to spread as much good as I can. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of my career and also this opportunity.
Framey has a question about your collection, but first, can you just be really real with us in this moment about what do the fans mean to you? Because you have to live under a rock not to see your face on one of the bajillion fan shows in the galaxy. You are there for every fan. You answer every question, every tweet. You are so open with the fans. So what do the fans mean to you and your journey in the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, contrary to maybe a small percentage of peers, we're here for you. If it wasn't for the fans, if it wasn't for fellow fans who I relate to so much, this character would be nothing. And so I have a tremendous amount of gratitude. I have two sons. I'm trying to get through college at some point. They're 14 and 11. If it wasn't for the fans, and I know that the industry right now has been becoming defensive. Oh, you didn't like that? Well, that's on you. You've got to be kidding me. I'm here for you. I did a B movie a year ago starring opposite Michael Madsen called Megalodon. It was a movie for Asylum, which, again, was just, is about as B movie as can be. I'm not here to tell you that it's your fault for not enjoying my performance. I can't tell you how appreciative I am. And I feed off that energy from all the fans. I had to wait for an hour. I was waiting for an illustrator at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago. And I got to see hundreds and hundreds of fans walk in. And even going back to high school, I always love to hang out with people who are passionate and enthusiastic about life. And when I see the cosplayers, when I see people that are passionate about Star Wars or passionate just about pop culture in general, I love you because I dated a few of those girls, or you might date a few of those guys to where they're too cool for school. And that's not my crowd. So people that are genuinely living life and just enthusiastic about something that brings joy to so many people, I feed off that energy. So I can't tell you how grateful I am for their blessing. And God willing, the last dream that I have is hopefully to become a figure, and hopefully that will come true. We'll see what happens.
Heck yeah, it's got to, dude. Gecko would be a great action figure without a doubt.
Yeah, 6'4" bounty hunter, like the Death Troopers, they were my favorite characters in Rogue One. I thought they just looked so badass. I'm hoping that Black Series or Disney's listening. Again, it's kind of a gray area. It's an 8-part series, so you just never know how many great characters or interesting looking characters are coming along. But I hope they'll have enough room for me, at least if anything, maybe a Topps card.
Be happy. I would buy it all.
Well, speaking of collections, Framey in our chat wants to know what's in that collection back there. What's your favorite pieces, and what do you always on the lookout for? What do you want to add, and then what do you want to add next?
Sure. I love icons. I thought icons about 15 years ago was so amazing in terms of really recreating the replica props. I have the Luke Skywalker lightsaber. I did have Han Solo in carbonite. Unfortunately, I sold it, which really upsets me to this day. I have the 6 original bounty hunters. I did not buy them, my 3.75 figures from the 80s. So somebody made a Funko Pop figure of me, a gentleman by the name of Brandon Pyle in Ohio. So I have that next to him. I have an original comic book. It's like barely holding together anybody from the 80s. It was just this big comic book. I think it was one of the originals of A New Hope. And then also autographs from Billy D. Williams. I have the 12-inch. I also have Tamora Morrison's autograph along with Ray Parks. And I have the 8-track in honor of John Williams. What a legend. And I hope that he never leaves us. I hope as long as we live, he lives. He's such a genius. So I have that. And then on the bottom level, I have 2 of the diorama boxes of side figures, of the side characters. And I'm hoping that I can join that lore and that canon soon one day. What I look for is I love the unique look of characters. Hopefully people will find the uniqueness within mine. That Jet Sith Trooper from The Rise of Skywalker, I had to purchase one of those. I love the 3.75. The Black Series, ironically, it's just because it's so big and bulky. I still enjoy the 3.75, but once I get my man cave, which is the dream, I'd love to go back and buy the Icon, blasters. I have somebody making a replica of my blaster. I'm going to do a tutorial for all the cosplayers if they ever want to dress up as me for any of the conventions. So I enjoy the replicas. There's something so magical about the blasters and the lightsabers that really pop out at me, and the way that they made those pieces there.
Well, if you get the kiddos through college, man, you can afford to build as big of a man cave as you want for all that stuff.
Let's hope so.
Well, it looks like so. If I'm reading this right, and I could be mistaken. I don't know, Pete. I'm looking for a question out of the fan chat, and Pete Fletzer asks. I guess you want to read this one, Pete?
Which one? Oh yes. Did your character live or die?
What a great question.
Firefight.
That is a great question.
It's a really good question. The way that it's cut, he lives. So,
that's the right answer. The way that it's cut.
The guy who was my makeup designer, Brian Sipe, who's a legend over at Legacy Effects. He headed up Bautista over there at Guardians of the Galaxy. He did Drax's prosthetic all the way through the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. I texted him this morning, and I just told him how grateful I am and how appreciative I am. It's up to Disney. Unfortunately, I have a mid-level agency. I'm a mid-level name. You guys know the stories. Even Brie Larson and Angelina Jolie are getting the door slammed in their face. So you just never know as far as if you get invited back or not. But again, it's the same thing. It's like if you won the lottery, and maybe that's what we need to fix in the world, just being appreciative of the opportunity. I would give anything to chase Luke within my character in the Kenobi series and maybe get my ass beat by Kenobi. But we just don't know where it's going to go. And I just don't have the star power to have any muscle or my agent to wager that. But thank God we were not seen getting hit. And I'm hoping that either we continue within The Mandalorian, or if anything, we'll go back in time, or if anything, hopefully my character will be carried on through fan fiction, action figures, illustrations, and things like that. Because like I said, even if it stops tomorrow, I can't tell you how grateful I am.
There's another season.
Yeah, there is. They're just starting production on it.
Yes, they are.
Well, Dominic, we are just we're really just thankful for you taking time to be on the show, and it's been such a thrill. Your episode drops today. We are able to speak with you about your experience and what the fans mean, and of course talking about your collection. It's just very fun, and I think that this is the part of the fandom we should always focus on. This is what we should celebrate. We have so many differences, but what brings us together is our love of this franchise. And man, you've just been a hell of a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And to all your listeners, I posted something yesterday. I might get a little overwhelmed with the emails, but the holidays sometimes isn't always great for people. And if somebody's a diehard Star Wars fan, or if some kid is sick in the hospital and they need a 30-second video from me, there's no charge. I know my agents will kill me, but there's no charge at all. Just to make someone happy on the holidays. Because like I said, I can't tell you how grateful I am, and to be able to pay that forward is more of a gift to me than receiving anything from this point forward.
Well, Dominic, thank you so much. Pete, is there anything you want to say in there before we let Dominic go?
No, other than I want to thank him and a little bit behind the curtain a little bit. Dominic and I have been speaking for months. I know he spoke to a lot of different people, and again, as I said at the top, Dominic, it's just been so great to see somebody as excited as you. And I think I speak for every fan that either follows you on Twitter or has been lucky enough to hear you on a podcast or knows you, to say really thank you so much for taking us on this journey with you. You've brought us into the Mandalorian. You've brought us along with you, and that excitement that you have is real. And I think we all feel it. And I couldn't be happier for you. When I saw you on the screen today, I was a little choked up myself. I was so excited for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to celebrate with the 501st tonight. There's a watch party. Just to tell you how the 501st is, I don't even know these people, and we're just going to, I'm bringing my son down, and they're making a whole dinner, and we're going to just celebrate with strangers, and that's the beauty of the Star Wars community, so I'm so grateful. Thank you.
It's going to be great. Dominic, we're going to let you go. We're going to ask that you send us to break. Really simple. Can you just say your name, the name of your character, and that you're watching streaming Star Wars? Can you do that for us?
Hi, my name is Dominic Pace. I am Gecko, the nickname Gecko, the bounty hunter for the Mandalorian, and you are watching Streaming Star Wars.
And we'll be right back.
All wings report in. Brand new Beyond the Blast Door collector pins are now in stock. Help spread the word about the Beyond the Blast Door Star Wars conversation by picking up a brand new exclusive show pin. Pins are only $8. Order and pay online at beyondtheblastdoors.com. Movies, TV, comics, toys, cosplay. Beyond the Blast Doors, a Star Wars conversation.
We are back on Streaming Star Wars Episode 3. It's a Friday. We are live, and we just had a great conversation with Dominic Pace, and we will be sure that we clip that interview and put it in full on the YouTube channel, but you can also listen to it, of course, again, on the podcast stream. I want to remind you again, you can always follow us on Twitter, Streaming Star Wars. That's how you would have found out, maybe, that we were going live with Dominic today. Of course, you're listening or watching the live show right now on Beyond the Blast Doors YouTube channel. And like I mentioned, the podcast version over there at Around the Galaxy. Wow. You hear Dominic speak on, and you cannot help but root for this guy because he is so genuine. He loves, it's not just he loves Star Wars. I mean, like, he is us on that set, I'm sure, where he is like fighting back every impulse to just fan out. And then the fact that he shares that with us, I mean, Pete, I feel like that was a special moment that we and our friends are having with him. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I couldn't be more. I'm getting a little bit of echo there. I couldn't be more excited for him. He's he's just a cool guy, and like everybody in the chat room was saying, he's represented, and as I said to him, and you said it as well, we're lucky to have somebody like him who's living that same sort of dream that we are, and he brought us with him, and he's just such a good guy. The fact that he's doing stuff for charity, he's willing to do phone calls for sick kids in the hospital, and he's right. His agent is going to want to kill him, but it's a great thing that he's doing. And
if Dominic Pace, I'm so sorry for talking over you. I was just going to say, if Dominic Pace shows up missing, one, that fuels the Italian-American stereotype that I combat as well every day, but also it is not our fault. So we just want to put that disclaimer out there. Oh, okay, Pete. I'm sorry. I felt like I needed to say something.
No, that's totally fine. I just feel like Dominic is the old adage that good things happen to good people, and we're just so happy for him. And also happy that we've gotten this phenomenal show, The Mandalorian, to watch all the time and to come to life for us.
I never thought that I would see a baby that looks like Yoda. I never thought I would see Mandalorian, like real Mandalorians flying around on jetpacks. I never thought that I would have compassion for a bounty hunter. I never thought that I would get to see post Return of the Jedi Star Wars stories, and we get to celebrate all of that here with The Mandalorian. So big shout out to everybody in the live chat too, because Pete, we were watching this while Dominic was with us, and everyone was having such a blast hearing what he had to say. They were throwing out questions. We got to some of your questions. If you have more, by all means, continue to share them. You know what? I think Dominic is so gracious. I bet we could have him back. I bet he would come back to us in the future. So there's always a next time. But I think now what we need to do is dive into the next segment. Pete, you want to take the lead on that one, bud?
Yeah, so every week, David and I are going to pick 4 things that really stood out to us in the most recent episode. He'll give us 2, I'll give us 2, and we're going to talk about the things that really hung out to us. There's a lot of places you can go and find reviews of the show, etc. We're going to go in there as well, and we're going to have some fun. And I'll go first, Dave, of the 4 things that we took away from this episode. First of all, I have to say, doing the show at 2:00 in the afternoon has made it so that I've only been able to watch the episode twice. I haven't been able to watch it more than that. So I think when we're done here, I'm going to go watch it again. But the thing that stood out to me once again this week, with all the amazing things that happened in this episode, Baby Yoda stole the show again to me with when he hops out of the little carriage and he starts playing with the ball on the dashboard, and the way that they've captured the expressions and the life of this baby. I was telling you before, I was literally angry when he turned over the baby.
Right.
My son was watching it with me this morning, and he said, "Oh, no, don't give him up. Don't give him up." And it's a puppet with computer, I'm guessing, with CGI additions, but there's so much life in that little green thing that I can't believe how attached I am to this thing.
Well, and I think you make a really good observation there. It is a puppet, but there has to be CGI use, right? Because how does a puppet jump out of the cradle like he did in the very opening scene? You know, how he crawls out
awesome.
and he starts playing with the joystick. You know what? A little CG. The prequels, always make Star Wars fans have to offer up a disclaimer, right? Because like too much of a good thing is a bad thing. I don't agree with that. I love the prequels, 2 of the 3. But the point here is that how that really enhances the character. If it was a puppet that was stuck to that cradle, there's only so much you can do do with that character. But the fact that he's crawling, or she, we don't really know what, but the child is crawling in the cockpit of the Razor Crest. And I love that shot where about 2/3 into it, I guess they're walking towards the Razor Crest because the Mandalorian has recaptured the child, and the ears of the child are flapping in the breeze.
Yep.
And
it's so alive.
It's
so alive.
Yeah, right. It's such a subtle decision that I think Deborah and crew did with that scene. But to me, it goes a really long way. I mean, it really felt like a Western. My gosh, the wind's picking up, the music's picking up as well. You have all these bounty hunters coming into the shot as well. So I felt that Western space vibe that we've heard discussed so many times with influences from The Good, Bad, and Ugly and X, Y, and Z other Westerns. So I think you have a great point here. And Pete, can you go anywhere on the internet right now and not see the child promoted somewhere or raved about by someone? This is the fan favorite character.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing happening because it's called The Mandalorian, but I think more people are talking about the little green Yoda character. I mean, I actually, for the first time in my life, created a meme. I was so excited about this little thing. So
it was a really good first effort. We'll give you that much.
It wasn't too bad. I was pretty happy with it. But like we were saying, like the character has so much life when they're wheeling him out or floating him out. When Dr. Pershing is pulling him out of the room, and just the little look. I wanted to like jump through the screen and save him myself, but he has taken over. It has taken over the Mandalorian, and that, of course, we were just, I don't know, but if you saw it, but there's rumors that the Baby Yoda toys are going to hit the market very soon. just in time for Christmas. And I'll leave my address in the notes if people want to mail us Christmas gifts. Is that too much? Did I go too far?
I don't know. I mean, Charlie's already your Patreon supporter, so he might as well send you something in the mail. No, I'm just kidding,
enough.
Charlie.
That's enough.
No, Tim, doesn't it make sense, though, where you can't let that cat out of the bag? And I really appreciated Dominic addressing this and the fact that they were extremely secretive about this reveal, even on set, where he and others on set thought this was like a baby Rey or a Foe or Poe or Finn from the new movie. So this even surprised them when they're seeing the episode for the very first time, which I thought was really cool. You got to keep this secret as long as you can. Listen, I said something on Twitter the other day, and I'm just being honest here. I think it was a real shame that they could not release Disney Plus worldwide on the same date. The fact that we have friends of the show that cannot watch our show really until March because that's when they get Disney Plus and The Mandalorian. It's a concern. You can only keep this reveal quiet for so long. A couple days ago, the official Star Wars account, the official Mandalorian account, they're starting to tweet out photos of the child. So I feel like once that happens, it's all fair game. We can talk about it openly now. There is a child that resembles Yoda in this series, and it makes sense. Let's get the toys in the aisles at your Walmarts and your Targets and your toy stores for the holiday season. I mean, I was in Walmart just the other day. It's a Walmart in the Midwest, and there was like no Star Wars merch at all. And I hope The Mandalorian changes that, and there should be a lot of Baby Yoda.
I hope you're right. David, what was your first thing that you picked up?
Was that really was that too much passion? Was that a rant?
No.
I'm sorry. That was too much of a rant.
Are you talking about me? Did I have too much passion asking
me.
about your
You have
second
all
point?
The passion. I love you.
We have nothing but passion on this show. It's a passionate show.
It's 2 p.m. your time. It's 1 p.m. my time. I freaking wish I would have poured some bourbon. Okay, so here's my take. There are so many things to love about this show that you can have gripes with some aspects. Art is subjective, I think is a fair statement to make. And there will be some things that maybe not work. I think I was kind of vocal on the last show. The score doesn't quite work for me. It feels too much not Star Wars. And it feels like something that maybe would accompany like another sci-fi show or just another show. Like, especially like even when you watch the recap of the previous episode, I woke up this morning, I put on episode 3, it recaps chapter 2, right? It was like boom, boom, boom. I was like, is this ER? Like, what am I watching? Like, is this, what's another show out there? Gilmore Girls, that hasn't been on for a while, but it kind of felt like I was watching one of those shows, and it really kind of was jarring. Again, it's like a mini thing, but it's just something that I noticed. The score again this episode kind of let me down. I just, I think like a Kevin Kiner that did some great stuff for Clone Wars and Rebels, where it feels like Star Wars, but it's still a unique interpretation of that galaxy that John Williams has created musically. I think Ludwig is a really great musician. I just think that I hope maybe a different approach is taken with season 2. I have a feeling like this will be a lot of the similar sounds and tunes we'll get for this season. But maybe the music is working for you. I want you to let us know in the live chat down below. If you're watching on the Rewind, comment down below. Listening on the podcast, you can tweet us at StreamingSW. The other thing that stood out to me as well was the dialogue, where I felt like the structure of the episode, it felt for the first time like a TV show, and this is something that both Pete and I have said throughout the show, is there were cues early on that told you exactly where this episode was going. You knew, when Greef Karga pulls out the fact that he got rich too and has the Beskar in his chest plate, well, that's an interesting place for him to be keeping it. I feel like he just kind of like waved it around for the Mandalorian to see. Maybe that was also a cue for us. I wonder if that's going to come into it later. And sure enough, he gets shot out of the Razor Crest there at the end of the episode, and wouldn't you know it, he was saved by the Beskar in his pocket. It was like a wink to you, and it was great. And, the writing too. You get Mandalorian giving cues as far as what are they going to do with the child? What will happen to the child? Well, that's against the code. You can't break the code. And who else had what are they called? The sensors, the fobs. Who else did you give a fob? Who had a fob? Oh, that came into play, didn't it? Like when the entire cantina got a fob. So it's not a critique. I will say this though, and Pete, you can tell me I'm wrong or right, but I feel like if this was not Star Wars, it would get torn apart. But I think that this fits within Star Wars, so everyone's like, Yeah, it's not as like Battlefront 2 checkpointy as like Maz in Last Jedi, but this definitely felt like, the storytellers were winking at you, letting you know where the story was going. Am I being too much here about this topic?
It's I think you're on to something there. I do feel like there was some sort of verbal exposition that normally we wouldn't have gotten.
Does that mean you're saying I'm right? Am I right?
I'm saying you're pretty right.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Although
okay. That's kind of you just skip Bayless me just now. Well, you're not really. All right, you kind of are. Okay, yeah.
Hey, I don't want to make you feel too good. I don't want to give it all to you right there. But no, I do agree. I feel like the dialogue in this, and I'm still with you on the score. I'm trying to talk myself into liking the score. I think it's cool music. I just don't know if it's Star Wars music. But I also, here's the thing. The episodes are still short. This one was 37 minutes or 39 minutes. So they do have to try to put a lot in there. I'll tell you, more than the points you were bringing out, I wanted to like the scene in the Mando conclave a little bit more than I did. But I felt like the voice they used for the heavy gunner was it just didn't feel right. It felt like they were trying to, it felt more maybe I didn't expect such a tribal sort of sense from the Mandos, but now I'm just trying to find problems with it. At the end of the day, I found nothing that made me think it was not a great episode.
Yeah, this show is great. I'm just pointing that out. I'm just pointing that out. And I'm not trying to sound like an ungrateful fan, but yeah, I mean, those are the things that stood out to me. I thought for a moment, I really did. I was like, is that Mandalorian, the heavy duty one, is he voiced by Jon Favreau? It kind of sounded like Jon Favreau. Yeah. I don't know if it was or not. I don't think it was. I mean, we know that he was pre-Vizsla, right? So he's got his voice attached to one Mandalorian, not just any character, another Mandalorian. So, but yeah, that I did notice that. I think that was an interesting observation. Greef is a freaking cool character, and this is your next point, man. He's a star of this show.
Yeah, he was a standout to me in this episode because I think we finally got to know him a little bit. We got to get a little sense of his, what makes him tick. The ability to go hang out in a hot tub with some Twi'leks was something that kind of was of interest to him, and we saw that. He's like, obviously he's the head of a bounty hunters guild, so he's a little bit questionable of character. He's driven by money, but he's also kind of like a lovable scoundrel in a way. And I thought it was great. I also liked and you pointed it out. It was a little heavy-handed, and it was a little bit too straight out of the out of a gimme. But the fact that the Beskar saved his life. The Beskar, it's not only what the reward was, but it's the life of the Mandalorian. And so the fact that it was his lifeblood and it saved him too kind of makes now a deeper connection to the Mando. Because look, now the Mando he's an outlaw himself. Mm-hmm. The guild is going to be going after him. The entire group of Mandalorians is going to have to leave now because they did say something within the episode that said, we are only allowed to go up one at a time. And they went up however many flying Mandalorians there were. So it's things have changed, but I think there's a connection to Greef Karga that will be deeper.
I'm such a fan. And you know what, though? It makes sense, though. And I think that they kind of show their cards in a way with the show, because why else would you have Carl Weathers come back and direct an episode in season 2? And maybe that's an assumption and a foolish one on my part, Pete, and I'll be fully honest about that. You could have killed this character off, and you could have still brought him on to be involved with the show as just a lone director. And who knows what happens with Greef? We still have 5 episodes left of this season. It could happen. But, it's you bring in Carl Weathers. There is an expectation with that name that you're going to utilize him. And when you know him as Apollo Creed and you know him as, other characters on his IMDb, he has to play a role where you feel his influence, and you do. And I wish that I could go somewhere where Greef would ask me to go to a strip show, because I'd go with Greef. I mean, he's got that Beskar, so he's throwing down a lot of bills. What's he got to lose? He's got like 4 in his chest. And he didn't show his other pockets.
Champagne room, like he's ready to go.
Oh, it's like, have you ever watched Game 7 of the World Series and the team just win? I did. My Cardinals won it back in 2011, as Dominic so kindly mentioned. And, they're ripping off bottles. They're shaking the bottles. They're dumping all their friends over in the champagne. That's what you're doing with grief in the strip house, okay? You got some Twi'leks coming over. They're winking at you. They're smiling at you. I think we're supposed to get some Twi'leks in the show as, like, crew members maybe of the Razor Crest eventually. That's what the one shot to me teased. I could be wrong. Maybe she's just another bounty hunter. But there is something about our male species really likes about the Twi'leks. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're French, but would like to hang out with grief there.
They're French? Twi'leks are French? Oh,
yeah,
I guess maybe their accent's a little heavy on the French side. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, if you watch like Clone Wars.
Yeah, I see that.
They're not all. I think it's not Sabine. Oh my gosh,
Hera
from Rebels. That was a brain space. She broke that accent. She's been away from the home planet for quite some time. Got away from her dad, who had like bipolar. He was bipolar because you watch the first episode of him in Clone Wars, and he was like a jerk. And then you go back to him after that one book came out, Lords of the Sith, and he's a nice guy. I'm sorry, that was a slam at canon. Not connecting appropriately. That's okay. I can let it go. Hey, let's talk about the Mandalorians in general, Pete, because I'm rambling. This is my second and final bit here. And I've mentioned it a few times. And again, when I watch this show, I think of someone else, Jesse Buck from Beyond the Blast Doors. Jesse is a Mandalorian cosplayer. He loves Mandalorian culture. He's just like really invested in that element of Star Wars. When I'm seeing the Mandalorians fly up from behind that structure, and then they're landing down, and the heavy duper Mandalorian brings down the machine gun and starts mowing people down. I mean, this is Star Wars that, I thought it was possible in cartoons because I had seen this done in Clone Wars and in Rebels, and I'm like, oh, that's how we're gonna get Mandalorians. Like, why would we ever get Mandalorians on the big screen? Well, maybe it's not on the big screen, but maybe it's on your screen, and maybe your screen is 55-inch or 80-inch or 24-inch, but you got it now. And I'm freaking out. Because I was wondering, when they show you that corridor in the first episode where the Mandalorian gets his first paladin, it's like, are they going to talk? Like, I thought there was only one Mandalorian. There are more Mandalorian. Is it plural Mandalorian? Mandalorians? Mandalorian eye? Yeah. Is this Latin? I don't know. So I was so happy to hear them kind of like and bullying our Mandalorian and being rough with him. And, they have like a little dagger skirmish there. And the armor is like, you guys are a bunch of pansies because I could kick all of your asses. And I think the armor is still my favorite. I think the armorer has so much potential in this show. I hope she gets to unveil herself as more than just essentially a over-glorified blacksmith. But
right. I think we will, yeah.
Just so freaking cool, man. I don't know. You're watching that battle scene happen, and the ship's pulling away, and you're just seeing these characters on jetpacks flying over. I mean, how do you digest that the first time?
So I have to say two things. One is I think you and my 7-year-old should hang out because, like, when the gun battles start, that's when my son he's all in on that stuff. Like, that's his thing. And it's funny because I loved it, but I'm more I love sort of the character thing. But the thing that struck me when I saw, and this is the first place my brain went, when I saw the Mandos flying, my first thought was, what was Dave Filoni feeling at that moment? Filoni created the look, created the Mandalorian history and the Mandalorian background. And to your point, I think you're 100% right. I always just assumed we'll never see a Mandalorian in live action. And to see them come to life, and then when the guy flies by at the end, and the Mandalorian has the best line of the whole episode when he says, I got to get one of those. That was fantastic. Fantastic. But I'm watching it. I'm thinking, maybe, Filoni had made a comment in one of the interviews about it's really amazing to see characters you created come to life. And everybody says, well, we must be going to see Ahsoka. But he brought this Mandalorian culture to life in Clone Wars. And there it was on the screen. So that's where my heart went when I saw that.
Mr. Rez says he likes my tangents, by the way, in the live chat. Also, a little confusion. Can we get clarification? Are you saying that I have the IQ, attention span, intelligence of a 7.5-year-old?
I'm not saying the IQ, but I think you were impressed with the guns. I can't say anything but that. That's now it's on tape, it's on video, it's for the world to see from this point forward.
I was just talking about going to the strip show with freaking Carl Weathers, and now you're like, you're 70
I
and a half
think
year
my
old.
son would go with you. I think my son would definitely go with
to
you
the strip show. Are you allowed to say that as a parent?
Probably not.
I have concerns about your parenting based on what you've said just on this show. I'm worried for Jax.
Episode 3, and I've made some poor parenting mistakes so far.
People in the live chat are like, "Get DCFS over there." This we got concerns, man. This guy's taking the kid to the strip show and hanging out with this guy 374 miles away. Anyways, okay. Well, they like the tangents, so we can do that. No, it's a great show, and Pete, it's like I said before, it just. You're wondering how the show will outdo its last episode, and every episode has so far. I think in the first episode, that skirmish with IG-11. Then in the second episode, we get the Jawa sequence, and that was pretty cool. And of course, how the Mando gets the baby. That was fine with the creature and all that. But here in episode 3, this is saga quality action, saga quality visuals, and even though I made the comment, I love the pace of this episode. The dialogue was something I mentioned, but you did move through this episode very quickly, which is overall, I think, our only real gripe with this show is the fact that we just wish that we had like another 10 minutes each episode. But if this is the length and the story is right, and those 10 minutes added would just add filler, okay, I'll just take the tight 32. I'll just take the tight 32. What do you think?
I'll tell you what I'm feeling as I watch this show, and I'd love to hear people in the chat agree with me. This feels very much like a video game to me, right?
Okay.
Everything is point A to point B. You're given a mission, just like when you play a video game, and I'm only like an hour and a half into Jedi Fallen Order. I wish I had more time. There's just no time to play all this stuff and get involved in it. But it feels like a video game in that the show begins with sort of, there's your tutorial, right? This is a puck. This is how you capture things. Here's what you do. Then you go back and you get paid. Okay, you've gone through your tutorial. Here's your first mission. Go get this baby. And then there's a battle. You got to fight your way through, and you got the boss with the gun. You get your quarry. Then you go to your next thing. You fight your way through there, and then you're given a mission from the Jawas, and you take on the boss. And then you go back, and now we're back to that same sort of thing. You've collected your money. You go to the shop. You buy and upgrade your armor, and now you have to make a decision in the story and blast your way out. So to me, and look, this is not a bad thing. It's what happens when you have a story that follows one character. There's been and meanwhile, back with the Imperials, or meanwhile, back in the Cantina, it's all, the camera is on the Mandalorian the entire time. So I think it's great. And I think it makes for a very interesting kind of way to tell a story.
Yeah, I really do agree. And I wonder if it's the framework, keep in mind, only 3 episodes in the first season of all Star Wars content. Is this the format that all the shows will be? I don't think so. Kenobi is 6 episodes. Those could be legit full hours that you get with Kenobi in that series. I think that as much of a success as this series has already been, I should say, for fans and for Lucasfilm and for Disney, it's still an experiment. They're not quite sure. Yep. You can, you're taking a lot of what you know about TV and applying it to this, but it's not guaranteed those practices will work. But 40 million downloads in the first week suggests that they're doing pretty well for themselves. Yep. And I'll be curious to see what happens with Kenobi. How does Cassian Andor get presented? The Clone Wars, will the Clone Wars be 25, 22-minute episodes like they have been previously? Or will they be longer episodes because it's the final season? Dave Filoni gets to go back. And that's, I mentioned that. Pete, I'm watching The Mandalorian very, very intently because I wonder if I'm going to get any Easter eggs in Clone Wars when that drops in the spring.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think there's going to be connections. I think, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of direct connection when this series, this first series ends, this first season ends, to connect it back, because I'm pretty sure we're going to see the siege of Mandalore in Clone Wars 7.
Yep.
Isn't that correct from what I've heard?
I do, and I hope we also get the duel between Ahsoka and Maul that is teased in the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnson. I think that would be that has to happen if you ask me.
Yeah, I'd put money on that one, and so I'm excited to see how they connect it. And I think that's one of the interesting things happening with Star Wars right now is, I thought we would not see any Force users in this, and yet there's a Force user. I had no idea what to expect for this particular episode or this particular series.
Makes me happy.
All right, let me rephrase that. I had expectations. They've all been subverted and exceeded.
Yeah, baby. I just love the reward of having Favreau and Filoni at the helm of this, because I just feel like, and I say reward intentionally because when you invest, like a lot of people that listen to our show are casual Star Wars fans, and that's awesome. We love you being part of a conversation. There's some of us that dive really deep into Star Wars. Pete, you and I follow a lot of it. We got people in the live chat that are very passionate about their Star Wars. When you consume so much content, and there are key content creators in the Star Wars world, like how many people have told more Star Wars stories than Dave Filoni, right? So,
right.
It's a reward in a way that he continues to surprise you, and you're just like, this is such a Dave Filoni thing, and this is such a Jon Favreau thing. It's just really cool to watch what they've created, that story that they've created, and you get that return on your investment. I've watched all of the Clone Wars, I've watched Rebels, I've watched X, Y, and Z, I've read this comic book over here, and that stuff is getting sprinkled in left and right, and then the new reveals, the Baby Yoda, the child, whatever we want to call it, it's just a really awesome time to be a fan, to watch his content, and to have the chance to watch a product created by fans for fans. It's freaking awesome. And so are you, Pete Fletzer.
Yeah, we got a question from Framey, which I want to read here. He said, "Could someone remind us of the airing date of the final episode? Wondering about Pete's thoughts." That would be me, but I would also love Dave's thoughts about direct detail being relevant to the Rise of Skywalker. So interestingly, the second to last episode, the penultimate episode, I like to use words like penultimate because it makes me sound smarter than I am, it comes out on the 18th. So the Wednesday before the end of, or the Wednesday before the Rise of Skywalker. Then the following episode, we got to wait 9 days until December 27th for the finale. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something they're holding back. If I remember correctly, I don't know if it was Rebels. I think it might have been Rebels, where there was something that was related, and we got the second half of the season after Force Awakens or something. I'm not sure if it was a direct connection, but I wouldn't be surprised. And in fact, it was interesting to hear Dominic say that he and others on the set thought it was a baby Finn, Poe, or Rey. I can see where they would have thought it was a baby Rey. And I was excited too that he didn't know coming into it. So that was fun. But yeah, so I think that's where there could be a connection. I don't know what it would be. I think maybe there'll be a Mandalore connection of some sort. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see something that ends up coming back to be in that gigantic fleet scene.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't think so. No, because the whole point of this story is not to be involved with the saga movies. The whole point is to go off and tell this off main drag story with the Mandalorian and see the galaxy through the eyes of characters that don't have a significant role. They even say it in Chapter 3, right? Well, if you don't like how it is, then you can go into the core worlds and tell the New Republic about the child. Well, that's a joke.
Right.
Like, that's the whole point of this show. So could there be an Easter egg? Oh, hell, I guess there could be a blaster use or something. But I don't really want that to happen. I feel like the Mandalorian could be maybe referenced elsewhere. I could see the Mandalorian having influence somewhere else, maybe in the comics. I say that though out loud. Like the main line now restarts in January with Charles Soule, and that's going to be starting right after Empire Strikes Back. So, I think there's a chance elsewhere, but I think Episode 9. You have so much to wrap up. What have we heard, Pete, about The Rise of Skywalker? It's not just the end of this movie, not just the end of this trilogy. J.J. Abrams is trying to end a 9-film saga. So you're telling me that you're trying to wrap up everything from Force Awakens, what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi, and then you're going to try and wrap up what happened in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, and We have our speculation of how that's going to happen with the Emperor involved, right? Spoiler, you have to be living under a rock, right? So, I mean, you have so much you have to do as a director, as a creative, him and Chris Terrio writing the screenplay. Why add one more thing? I mean, they're not having, Skype chats, between J.J. Abrams and Favreau and Filoni going, okay, so this is what we're going to do in episode 4 of The Mandalorian.
Right.
And we think that we can
that's the thing that I try to remind people of all the time when they come up with crazy fan theories and great fan theories, and that's the fun of what we do.
Oh,
as
some
fans.
of them are garbage, though. Can we say
right,
that? There's some bad ones.
The point being that I think you do have to keep in mind that, look, 40 million downloads of this, 10 million people subscribe to Disney Plus. Not everybody who's going on December 20th to see The Rise of Skywalker will have seen this. So I wouldn't say that you're going to get a direct connection. There'll be some sort of tip of the hat, but I agree. I don't think it's going to be a direct relation.
He has spoken. I have spoken. Episode 3 of Streaming Star Wars on a Friday at an unusual time for us. But you know what? It works. And honestly, that's the great thing about the episodes dropping in the morning, Pete, is the fact that we have the flexibility to where maybe if it works better for our guest, we can do episodes a little earlier in the day. In this case, it worked better for Dominic. We could make it happen. And I think it's been a lot of fun. Anything else we need to talk about before we get out of here on this Friday so we can go enjoy the weekend and you get back on your parenting duties?
Well, the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we last week we did the hashtag contest.
Oh, we got to give some stuff away, don't we?
Let's give some couple things away, and then we'll let the kids go and have some fun. But so last week we were asking to spread the word about streaming Star Wars, and we used the.
I'm singing.
Oh, okay.
All I want to do is have some fun, me and my baby. Sorry. Is it now? Do we have to file copyright? Because it wasn't 15 seconds. We're good.
Well,
no, we're good.
You were okay. But so we asked to use the hashtag last week. I like those odds. I like those odds when you shared the show. And we'll do a similar thing this week. But last week's winner it was the Boba Fett plushie with the pin was a listener named Brad. That's all we have as for his name. But we do know that his handle is @Snoke's son-in-law. So Brad, contact us, send us an email at streamingsw@gmail with your address, and we will mail you out a Boba Fett plushie. Very exciting stuff. And so this week, what hashtag do we want to use this week, Dave?
Well, it's here. We got a good one here. So we want to remind the viewer of how this works. And there was a moment of silence. I guess we were paying our respects to someone who had left. I thought you were just going to steamroll this.
I could steamroll, man. That's my second thing.
I mean, isn't that it's like when you describe skill sets of David and Pete, we both have steamroller on our descriptions. So I just wanted to explain the rules real quick of how the giveaways work on Streaming Star Wars, and then I'll let Pete go back and lead the conversation on the giveaway, because this is that's just how this show works. He's a host, I'm a host, we co-host. It's a thing. It's kosher. So 3 ways to enter the giveaway. Okay, so the first thing that we'll do is when we end our live show in about 5 minutes, maybe even less. What you got to do is you got to refresh your page real quick and then comment in the comment section with the hashtag that we're about to give you. So that's how that works. You need to refresh your page so that way the stream is ended. You'll be commenting on the recorded episode with the hashtag that we give you. You can also tweet out the episode using the hashtag that we're about to give you. And then tomorrow, when the audio version, the podcast version of our show becomes available on Around the Galaxy's podcast stream feed, you can share that on social media and using the hashtag. So we're giving you 3 different ways to enter. You can enter each of the 3 ways. So that means you get your name in the hat 3 times, which is, I like those odds. So
funny.
Let's, we want you to win stuff, and that's cool. And as our show grows, the prizes grow. Maybe you've noticed that. I'm excited to see what we're able to give away here by the end of this first season of The Mandalorian. But we got some cool stuff to give away from our good friend Dominic Pace, right, Pete?
Yeah, we're gonna give away to somebody using the hashtag. This week's hashtag is going to be #Mando Jetpack. MANDO Jetpack. That's this week's hashtag. The 3 ways that David just told you how to do it. Mando Jetpack. And Dominic is going to sign a I think it's a photo of the Gecko Bounty Hunter, and we'll get that out to the winner. But you know what, Dave? Let's head over to the chat and let's give out another one of those from Dominic, and I'll ask a trivia question.
Let's do it.
This is going to be a speed typing question, as always.
I'm going to go too. I'm going to try too.
Are you gonna enter this one, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to. Mr. Rez, you just commented in the live chat with hashtag Mando Jetpack. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, it is not in the live chat that gets you entered in the contest. You have to enter after we end the live stream. You have to comment in the comment section on the rewind. Okay, so Pete, what's the trivia question, bud?
So here's the trivia question. Everybody get your fingers on the keyboards. Here we go. Ready? It's kind of an easy one. That's why I want everybody to be ready. Could I drag this out a little longer, Dave? Do you think? Should I just keep rambling maybe till about 4:30?
Well, we've lost 2 people in the live chat since you started rambling, so maybe you should just get on with it. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, good point. Okay, so what was the name of the character that was voiced in the Clone Wars by Jon Favreau? Go!
Okay, I entered Shaggy.
Shaggy, close.
No. Wait, no, isn't it Shag High?
High.
Remember in the micro series, the Clone Wars micro series, they made Shaggy a Jedi that gets like stomped by Grievous.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Crazy. I'm surprised that no one's.
I think everybody's Googling it.
Why is everyone stumped on this? This is so obvious.
Here's the funny thing, Dave. You actually dropped it during the episode.
Oh, did I really?
You did.
Isn't that
I almost
cool?
had to go look up another trivia question while we were hanging out.
No, I like that the idea is that if you watch this show,
right, if you're paying attention, right,
you can win a cool thing. That's such a great. It's like we planned this out. It's like we planned this show out. It's like, world, we plan our show out. Okay, I'm done. I'm overreacting. I'm just having a good time. It's my
Charlie
weekend.
Says trivia's on delay, but you know what? Nobody's answered, so.
No, I like it. You know what's so funny is before the show, Pete's like, man, we got to really pick an easy one because the time of day of our show is a little odd. Yeah. Not sure people are going to hang out. Oh, do we have somebody?
We got it. RFB, Rural Farm Boy.
Ding, 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 ding.
Bisla. Very good.
Yeah, baby.
There's our winner. So, RFB, send an email to us at streamingsw@gmail with your address. I have it because you're a patron here. I think you might even be a patron over at Beyond the Blast Doors, but we have it somewhere.
We have it in multiple places.
We'll get it out to you.
Holy cow. That was exciting. God, it's like I had coffee or something. I need to calm down. Although I think the energy level is good. I should be a little bit more eccentric. You're the straight guy. And no, I'm just kidding. You're a lot funnier than I am. Hey,
that all depends.
Streaming Star Wars Episode 3 on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us for the show. Pete, anything else you need to get out there for the good people to know?
Well, if you are following us on Around the Blasters, we do have, in addition to the audio from the show next week, we have another show. We had Marshall Julius is our guest. He is an author, a writer, and he wrote a trivia book, and he's from the UK, and it was a fun and funny episode next week with him. That'll drop Wednesday. We changed our drop date to Wednesday because of here and because of the show here. I don't want to totally clog up your stream, but hopefully you'll catch us there. And more importantly, thank you all for joining us today.
Really excited to hear that show. I'm going to call you out though. Around the Blast Doors, you're creating branding issues for us.
Did I say Around the Blast Doors?
No, it's okay. I almost said Beyond the Blast Doors earlier when we were talking with Dominic, so I cut myself up real quick.
Did I say Around the Blast Doors?
Yeah, that was funny.
I'm wearing a shirt that says Around the Galaxy that you can purchase at TeePublic.
God, you're such a merch whore. Unbelievable.
TeePublic.com/user/streaming Star Wars. You can get the shirt that David's wearing.
That's right. You know how loyal I am on my show? I wear that show's shirt. So when you watch me on Beyond the Blast Doors, I have that shirt on. And then when I'm on this show, I have this show on. And then when Pete's on this show, he's like, please, got to promote the flagship.
Well, I just did a video with my next interview, the one after next week, and I'm wearing a Streaming Star Wars shirt. So
that's so nice.
I'm an equal opportunity product whore.
Are you going to go live for another episode on Around the Galaxy in the future? Because I really like that. You did that with recently with the guy over at WSTR, right?
Todd I'd like to do it. But it's a matter of finding the right time to get the show up. But I am providing video now for patrons, so when I can.
Wow, listen to all those shameless plugs. Well, you know what? Beyond the Blasters has a Patreon too.
As long as we're plugging,
and we have a website.
You should check out Beyond the Blast Doors. As long as you're interested in things, they're selling pins now. Did you know that, David?
Yeah, I've been pushing those pins hard for about a year. No, it's actually kind of funny because I put out a call to action about those pins over the week. We sold 10 in 15 minutes. So big thanks to everyone who is supporting the channel. Really, it's a huge help because of that we were able to pay off the website for the next year. I mean, and just something like that. So keeping the lights on over at Beyond the Blast Doors. But this is Streaming Star Wars. This is episode 3 of the show, and you make it so much fun. We're so thankful for you to have joined us. Want to again thank our guest today, Dominic Pace, Gecko from The Mandalorian. Hope his character shows up. Would love to know that he makes it out of that skirmish with the Mandalorians, and we get to see him again. Dominic didn't give any signs he might be back when we asked him. He might have played. I mean, he's an actor, so maybe he fooled us all.
Yeah.
But if you follow us already, you know this. But maybe if you don't, Streaming SW. That's our Twitter handle. Make sure you join us. Live show always here on Beyond the Blast Doors YouTube channel. But that's where you can catch that rewind. It's on that rewind. You need to comment with hashtag Mando Jetpack. Hashtag Mando Jetpack. And then, of course, you can get the rewind there. Also, the audio replay podcast around the galaxy. For Fletzer, for Ammo, thanks for joining us for this episode of Streaming Star Wars, and we'll see you soon. Pete, you have a great rest of your day.
You too, man.
You in the live chat,
everybody.
have a great rest of the day. You listening right now, have a great time. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you soon. It's Streaming Star Wars.